So you've probably heard the saying, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Well, Mike Tyson said that, and I love that saying because it so embodies a lot of the guests that we talk to. It embodies Burn Your Boats theme as a whole, right? Well, today we're going to talk to a good friend of mine, Jon Parker. And Jon embodies this mentality that being able to take punches and not get completely thrown out of the ring is just such a huge skill set, okay? So if you're running your own business, you're investing into real estate, right? You're obviously going to be taking some risk, right? And then you're going to take more risks, but there's going to be wins, right? You're going to have your good days, but on the other side, you're going to experience some losses, whether you want to, acknowledge it or not, right? So that is what has made Jon so strong, so resilient. It's enabled him to go from starting out making $50,000 a year, working for somebody else. And in a short amount of time, maybe 10, 12, 13 years, he's made it to an 8-figure net worth all by the age of 33. And the thing I love too is that we all talk a lot about having freedom of time, right? I want to be able to spend time however I want, whether that's traveling, whether that's with family, however you want. Jon has been to 60 countries by the age of 33, which it just is amazing, right? Well, today you're going to hear Jon's highs, you're going to hear his lows, you're going to hear some of the ways that he had to have very challenging discussions with his investors over the last few years. And some of those conversations are not fun conversations. They're not things that you want to be able to talk to investors about, but the way that he handled it, the way that he embodied the spirit of leaders eat last, right? The way that he embodies taking one for the team, it just shows up time and time again throughout this discussion. So let's not delay any further. And I'm going to showcase everyone, Jon Parker. You're going to love this conversation. All right, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Burn Your Boats Wealth. I'm Clark. I'm here with my co-host, David Shaw. And today we have a really cool guest. He's a good buddy of mine. His name is Jon Parker. Jon has got a super interesting story. He has such a variety of things that he has done, both personally in his kind of real estate business life. Before that, when he was an athlete. And then he's kind of transitioned into the real estate sector in both residential and commercial. He's ridden some waves. He's gone through some probably great times, some slightly not so great times, and he's starting to come up the roller coaster again. So I'm excited, Jon, to have you here today. As an avid world traveler, all three of us on this call love that. We all kind of feed off of going to different places, different things. It's funny how you have a slightly different perspective when you're able to travel to different countries, talk to different people. You tend to have more of an open mind. So that really excites me today. So Jon, welcome to Burn Your Boats. How are you doing today, my friend?
Doing great. Thanks for having me. But yeah, I'd love to talk about travel all the time. That'd be way.
Anytime that I talk to someone and they mention they went to XYZ country and it wasn't like a cruise to Cancun, I'm like, oh, wait a second. Tell me about it. Like, what was your favorite part? How long did you stay? Like, where else is your favorite country? And it's funny, some of the best discussions that I have are ones that originate from that one piece of commonality. And then, then 2 hours later, we're trying to crunch numbers and solve business problems, right? But it all originated from that. So before we even kind of jump into it, give us like your top three, Jon. What are your top three countries that you've been to that are off the radar a little bit?
Put me on the spot. Similar, like I love travel, and obviously, like probably all of us, we all started with like the Cabo type trips, and
right.
Eventually graduate. So I love places that give complete culture shock. Things that you can't see or do anywhere else in the world, especially in the U.S. The one that sticks out to me is probably Vietnam. Going there, there's no rules, there's no street lights. There's like people just walking the roads, people crossing the street. It's like leapfrog. A beer costs 15 cents American. A good meal costs $2. So that was very like, wow, this is crazy. And also, the infrastructure there has not been upgraded since Vietnam. There's nothing new. So that's one that sticks out for sure. And then this place it's becoming a lot more touristy, but the scenery to me was a big eye opener, a place I want to go see in the future. It was Iceland. So, Reykjavik and the Blue Lagoon, I'm sure, obviously there, but something about being in the Arctic. I've never been in an Arctic country before, and just exploring and seeing like the scenery and like the pureness of the air and the water and just something about it was like very refreshing. And now I have the itch now to go to other Arctic countries like Greenland, and Antarctica is really high on my list, or even going to see like places like the glaciers like in Patagonia. So that was a big moment for me because I'm not a big outdoorsy person per se. Like I travel to a lot of places off the beaten path that are more urban, downtowns. So going there was like, I was like, oh, cool. I actually really do enjoy this.
Right.
And probably third, that's where it gets tough because like now they start to become like all blended together. Um, I would say probably going back to like places that are just really unique, like Ecuador. Oh, Quito in Ecuador is the second highest populous city in the world. And like, to be in that altitude and like see how like mountain people quote unquote live and like just different like way of life. And then also that was unique because I went there on my 30th birthday and stood at the equator, which is,
That's cool.
halfway point of the earth. So I kind of stood, that was fun. But yeah, I've been to 60 plus countries.
I think, John, that unfortunately to travel to 60 countries, it's not free. It's hard to go to 60 countries when you've got you're chained to your desk. And, typically you have to achieve some sort of success. That's like the number one thing. Like I hear every single podcast I listen to is like time freedom, right? Like, oh, I want to be able to spend time on my own, do things on my own, do it with my family, whatever that is. And you just said you went to 60 countries, right? But it doesn't come for free and it takes work. So talk to us a little bit about what enabled you to get there? Kind of just walk us through the kind of high level of where you started out that even enabled you to get to that point.
Great question. So I've been in the real estate space about 12 years. Going back to 2013 when I started, I was playing professional hockey. I was part of the Buffalo Sabres NHL group, and I was in the minor league team. So my first, I guess you can call it my first job, I was 19, turning 20. I was in juniors for Canada in high school, and I played 1 year after graduating high school as a gap year, and then turned pro at 19. My first salary was $50,000. And, that's probably something making like 100 grand now. So it was pretty good. Especially never having money before that. Like my highest paying job was like a summer job, $1,200. So I didn't know how to live above my means. So like pretty much I lived the same way I was living before. So after the season ended, I had like 35 grand of the 50 grand that I made. I spent virtually no money. So I went into this, that was my first pro training camp, played that year. And I was going into summer camps for my second year of pro hockey. And I was having lunch with an older teammate that had played for Buffalo, the bigger club. And it was really like a 10 or 12 year vet in NHL. Made really good money, probably worth $50 million, if not more at the time. And I was with lunch with him, a couple other guys, and then that first round draft pick next to me who just got a massive signing bonus. And they're making a joke like, don't buy a Ferrari because he's talking about going car shopping. And he made a comment that he said, hey, look, guys, I'm towards the end of my career now. I have made more money through real estate than hockey.
Wow.
I knew nothing about real estate, but I knew that he had made $50+ million in hockey. I'm like, holy crap. And he might have been just kind of kidding, but like, I think he meant the comment to be purposeful. Like he might have only made 15 from real estate, but
yeah,
it's like, hey guys, we're going to be smart with your money. So I had gotten a signing bonus, my second year of $30,000, which in hindsight, it's like disgusting because you hear all these guys making like $100 million signing bonuses now, but I got 30 grand plus my incoming 50 grand salary that had been for season 2. So I go back home for the summer. That was like midway through the summer part. And I just decided, I was like, you know what? I don't need this money. I don't even know what to do with it. I didn't know what the summer was at that point. So I was like, I'm going to buy a house. I didn't know anything beyond that. Didn't know how to underwrite, didn't know what was good, what was bad. All I knew is that there's only like 5 places in the whole US that I can afford a house. They only add 40 grand, right? So I'm like, okay, down payment. I don't have credit. I don't even have a credit card yet. So I don't have credit. Like I have nothing. I was like, okay, I'm going to find a place that I can afford and where I think that there could be upside. And again, I have no like background at that point on how to figure out what upside is. So I came to conclude that I want to be somewhat near California that has, so I thought that I might need to be nearby, either like driving distance, but I could not afford to be in California. So that kind of narrowed it down to the neighboring states, which was Arizona and Nevada. I had never heard of any city in Nevada or in Arizona. I mean, obviously Phoenix had the NHL team and, I didn't know what Scottsdale was at the time. But I've heard everyone's heard of Las Vegas. That was kind of like, okay, Las Vegas, marquee city, I can be in the market. And then upon research back then, my little research I did was that it was the most beaten down market in all the US during 2008. So, being a brainiac that I am, like, okay, if it's the most beat down, can't get any worse, you only go up. and I can afford to be there. That was the philosophy. So, by the time I figured out, decided on Vegas, I had to report back to New York for the season. So I go back to New York, and I hire a real estate agent from Las Vegas, from like Google. I typed in real estate agent Las Vegas, I didn't like interview anyone. I just kind of picked one. She's great. She's nice. She just went and saw homes for me. Like I never saw them. This is before FaceTime and things like that. So she would take a video or photos and send it to me through BBM. I had a BlackBerry, and that's how the dialogue back and forth. And after about 3 weeks or so, we're looking at houses. We decided on a house based on just like, hey, this house is for sale for 155 grand, or they might have been asking like 170. I bought it for 155. But the cool thing about this house was going back to, I don't know how to underwrite, but I was just looking on like Upside. This house sold in 2007, brand new, from the builder to whoever bought it first for 400 grand. Something, okay, this thing is knocked below 50% of the value, has to go up. Like that was like the only mindset. Newer construction, be maintenance free. I had no other money, right? So my thought was like, if I put all my money into this house and something goes wrong, I'm screwed. I have no other cash. So that's how I started. It was just a leap of faith. Older teammates told me to get in real estate, and I bought the house. I think I was renting the house for $900 a month, just basically thinking that 3-bedroom, 2-bath in a private community. I was renting for $900 a month. I think I made like 150 after holding costs. Like I was, making almost like pretty much $1,000 a year on it. So it was not exactly like a huge blockbuster deal, but it got me involved into real estate. Fast forward from 20-ish years old until 25, I bought no real estate because I was broke again. So I spent all my money on I played 2 more years in the AHL level, which I made 50 grand those next 2 years. And just like as you get older, you start spending more money. So my first year I spent nothing, saved it all up. My next year I bought a BMW. You start,
Of course.
So I had no more money. And then after my third year pro, I was like 23 or 22, 23. I went to Sweden for a year, played hockey in Sweden. And then I bounced around back in the US for a couple more years in the minor leagues. And I made less and less money every year. So the longer you're in the minors in hockey, like most sports, you just get less relevant to the big clubs. You just get paid less. So fast forward to 25, I had one property and I knew 2 things in life: hockey and a little bit about real estate. And I was retiring from hockey. I just had a lot of injuries, surgeries, and just did not see the chance of playing the NHL anymore. So the dream was kind of dying. And so I moved back to San Diego, retired at 25. And my first job in real estate, I needed a job. I had no money. I had like 7 to 8 grand in my savings account. I was a cold caller / account rep for a real estate company in San Diego. And pretty much all I would do is call to set appointments for this guy to go in there and put it in a lowball cash offer. That was pretty much, and he was actually doing the flips himself. He was not wholesaling, but that was my only job. He gave me a fancy title like analyst. Like it sounded way cooler than that. But I was literally just cold calling leads. And I did that for 6 months. He was paying me $2 grand a month base salary, W-2, and I had commissions based on how set appointments. So pretty much by month 6, I was on pace to maybe make like 70 grand, which 70 grand in San Diego is like making 27 grand here. You're almost. So I get the 6-month mark. I'm like, they're long hours. And actually I was beating all my quotas. If I'm beating the quotas, I'm still making no money. Like, what am I even being here for? So I went to him. I said, hey, look, I've been here since, 6 months now, and I've made you this much amount of money. I want to raise. I'm leaving. It's like, I'm 25. I'm scared of shit. Because if I get fired, I have no other job, no other source of income. Besides, like, I think at this point, my house in Vegas is making me like $400 a month now. It's gone up in rent. And he said, I'm not going to give you a raise. Like, this is a low level job, the whole thing. Like, you got to put your time in. So I quit. I said, you know what? I'm going to stay true to my word. Like, I don't see there's any point being here besides like paying my next month's rent. So I got my real estate license, which I swore I was never going to do. I never wanted to be in sales. I wanted to do investments and be my own business, but I needed money. So I got my license and did it pretty quickly. So after like 3 months of being a licensed agent, I got a like $2.5 million sale on the beach. I was like, oh shit, I'm about to make 75 grand. This is way better. I made 35 grand over the last 6 months. Now I make 75 grand in my first 3 months doing this. And I was starting to see like, okay, if I do this enough time, I can eventually put more into real estate and transition out of sales. So I always thought it was going to be a stepping stone. So I joined a team, do my first sale. I think I'm about to make 75 grand, and my check comes from my team leader, and it was like, I don't know, 14 grand. I'm like, and I go to I go in the office and was like, hey, where's the rest of my money? He's like, oh, well, there's a split from the brokerage. And then once it comes to me, then we have a split. And of course I signed the contract, but I was 25, 26, idiot, didn't know I was really signing. So I was like, I'm giving you like 75% of this check. I was like, yeah, that's how it works. It's like, but after your third deal, then your split gets like 8% better. I'm like, again, it's stupid. So I saved like 2 more months. I had a couple of deals at that point in escrow, and I quit again. I said, okay, this is a sign. I'm gonna work for myself. At this point now, I have, I was gonna be like 50 grand saved up between all my last job and the commissions. And I go out and I buy a portfolio of 6 homes in Toledo, Ohio. So going back to affordability, I had enough money to either buy another, like a secondary Vegas house where I put it all as a down payment and then still make $400 a month. But I was thinking that I'm going to be broke again and have besides maybe some cash flow. So that was kind of the first light bulb moment of like, okay, I want to do something that's going to be earned income in real estate. And at some point, maybe go back to investments. So I bought houses in Toledo for between 10 and 18 grand per house. Like one seller had 6 houses. And I went in there, I spent between like 5 and 10 grand per house. And I didn't think I was flipping it. I thought my plan was actually to do that and then lease them out and then maybe do cash for refi. Because I learned about this, cash for refi advantages versus taxes. But I do that. And I decided after I flipped or renovated all the houses, got tenants in there, I don't want to own in Toledo because it's an awful market. The city sucks. My renters were like prostitutes and drug addicts. I mean, literally, I flew in there after I got it all of them leased up, and I had one house that was acting as a brothel. She had girls coming and going. 8 girls that lived in the house. They had clients all day. She paid cash on time, but wasn't. I was like, this is not what I want, especially being in San Diego. So I was able to flip those 6 houses for like a 30 grand gain across all of them after closing costs. But again, like it was a learning experience and like understanding, okay, this is, if you improve a property, you can sell it for more, and kind of first dip my toe in that model of value add and learning how to underwrite and figuring out what to spend. So I came back 25, 26, and this is where the big momentum starts to happen, right? So I've done the one house in Vegas, I've done a 6 crappy house in Toledo, and I decided that I'm only going to do like larger projects that can actually make a good amount of money. So I started flipping homes in San Diego, and making 50 grand to 100 grand per house off of pretty much off of that lump sum I had. I just kept rolling it over. So I was not doing multiple projects at once. I was just doing one house flip, wait for it to sell. Now I had one from 70 grand to now I had 140. And then I would take that and then do a bigger deal. And eventually got to the point where I had multiple deals going out at once. And I kept doing that for the next like 3 years. So from 25 to 28, I was only a single family, only doing flips and making good money. Like I got to the point where, I was able to now like live a lifestyle that I thought I wanted to live and have a nice car, live in a nice place, all at a young age. And I told you this before, I had another light bulb moment, which really changed my career completely. At 28 years old, this would have been 2018, 19 range. I decided to get out of the rat race. I thought I was just buying myself a job at the flips. And I said, you know what, I want bigger things. And I started to learn a lot more about real estate in general, educational wise and syndication and commercial and things that I never really knew about before. Keep in mind, like podcasts like this and influencers like Grant did not exist like that. There was no one to really lean towards unless you had a direct mentor. You kind of had to figure it out yourself or deep dive research. So I just said, you know what, I'm done doing these small deals that I have to be on site every day, I have to babysit at the shop, what door handle is $1 less than the other door handle, like things that just, really time consuming. And I wanted to travel, I wanted to do things, I wanted to play golf and all these things that I felt like I needed to do a bigger project to get out of the rat race. So I sold off all my flips, all my houses. At that point, I had collected like 12 rental properties that I just acquired because I needed for tax. Pretty much every year, I had a good year, I'd buy 1 or 2 houses for depreciation and just sold everything. So in 2018, I said, I'm selling everything. I'm going to do my first commercial deal. I had a good amount of money, but I didn't have a ton of money. So all I could afford was an 8-unit building in Las Vegas. It was, again, a market that I knew the best. I bought the most, did the most amount of flips in Vegas during that time. And I got, such basically say, I got the 8-unit at 60 some grand, 62 grand a door, which, I wish I just kept everything at this point looking back, but same thing. So I did an approach, went in there, spent like 5 to 7 grand per unit, got new tenants in there, got a higher rent raise. And then, again, I was thinking, how can I get earned income? So my plan was never to like cash or refi or hold on, but I wanted to do that, wait 6 months for it to be stabilized and then sell. So I did that and I'm like selling them for like 80 grand a door, but like in 5-6 months. So, it made 200 some grand net, but I made that in a very short period of time. I said, okay, I'm going to do this, but now start doing bigger deals. So that was the first commercial deal I did it, and like proof of concept. And I did another deal very similar size. And then at that point is when I started doing syndication around 2019. And I reached out to all my hockey guys. I didn't have a company or a website or really even knew what syndication was until, a few months prior. I said, hey guys, look, I've been doing this now for X amount of years, both on houses now on multifamily. I've never lost money. Here's my average return. This is my avatar of purchase. This is the value that I can add. You guys are still playing hockey wherever you're at. I'm full time with this. And I sold that to 3 former teammates. So I didn't have a huge list of people to reach out to. I just reached out to people that I thought might be interested. And then we went and bought our first larger multifamily, and that made money. And then we got to the point where we started branching out to other sectors. So we instead of just doing multifamily, we're doing mixed use shopping centers, and did that all up until COVID. And then COVID threw a huge wrench in that. So I thought life was great. I was literally playing golf 4 times a week. I was in the office max 10 hours a week. When you buy big deals, you're able to leverage and hire people underneath you. So I mean, it was just thinking back on it, I thought I was building this empire, and I thought I was doing a good job, and bought back a lot of my time. I was traveling a lot, doing 10, 12 countries a year. And then COVID came, and everything that I thought was the right thing that I was doing, I started doubting myself, right? It just seemed like the world was just completely not real estate friendly at that time. There's certain things that did okay during COVID, but those first few months when there was mass lockdowns, curfews, everything just seemed to shut down. And that's what led me to Florida. But before that, March, April, May, June, the first few months of COVID, being in San Diego, which California, like New York, were the most restricted markets, lockdown, 10 p.m. curfew, 1 hour to walk around outside. If you were more than 1 hour, they write you a ticket. All real estate was shut down, so that all of our projects, you're not allowed to have anyone then working there. But meanwhile, you had to pay the taxes, insurance, your mortgage. And they did a nationwide eviction freeze. So we had properties, apartment complexes spread out throughout the U.S. We had shopping centers. First things first, the shopping centers gave us, all the corporate attorneys gave us notice to say, hey, we're not paying rent, we're closed down. We'll see you in court type thing. And I have some large tenants. I have Starbucks, I have Chipotle's, I have AT&T's, T-Mobile's. So when you get a letter from Starbucks corporate, you're not going to win that battle. You think I'm going to take them to court? They'll drag me out until I'm dead. So we just ate it. But meanwhile, because we're small fish, we're not institutional groups. When I call our banker saying, hey, we need to defer mortgage to back end, or we need some forgiveness, and they said, no, we'll just take the property back. So it was this weird phase of built this whole thing, making good money, and all was great. And then all of a sudden now I'm bleeding out several hundred thousand dollars a month in negative cash flow because we're not collecting anything yet. We have all these mortgages for these large properties. And that's kind of was the fight or flight mode. I would say probably the biggest adversity at that point in my career was, okay, if I don't figure this out soon, not only am I going bankrupt, I'm also losing all my investors' money, and just the world will be ending, right? So Florida was the golden era state, the only state that was really open during that time. And I just kind of took a leap of faith. So I got out of residential a few years prior to that, but I just did it very well. And I felt like that was the easiest thing to jump into right off the bat. Going and say, hey, I'm going to go buy an apartment complex in a quick fashion in Florida was not going to be an option most likely. So I went to the bank option websites online, bought 6 houses within a 5-day period from my computer in San Diego, never saw them, knew nothing about Florida. I'd never really been there besides eat and drinking and partying in Miami. So I was buying wherever the deal made sense. I was underwriting based on what I knew data-wise, but not obviously the market. For all I knew, I was buying a house next to a crack house. I didn't really know the areas, but I was just taking a leap of faith. Only did that with my money because I wanted to see how it worked out. But, I did the 6 houses. And as you guys know, those first 6 months, 2020 out of COVID, that was probably the craziest market I've ever seen ever since I've been around. We were buying houses for $300 grand that needed 50 grand of rehab. By the time we were finishing it, the house that we thought was going to be worth 450 was now worth 600 grand. And we had 15 offers. It was just a little bit of, it felt like it was almost like the real estate god saying, okay, we know you got screwed over on all of this and you didn't make any bad decisions. It was not like you were being greedy, and so it was kind of rewarding that. So I was going back and forth from San Diego to Florida, 1 week on, 1 week off. And I was there a lot because I didn't want contractors to know that I didn't live in Florida because they take advantage of you. So I said, I'll be back tomorrow, the next day. What I would do is I'd fly back and just be back on a random Saturday and not tell them. So they believed it. They thought I lived down the road and just had a lot of projects going on. Meanwhile, I was interviewing these guys on Facebook, Craigslist, like Angie's List. I didn't have any guys. I knew one in Florida. So a lot of trust, a lot of, hiring and firing in the beginning. Okay, by July of 2020, we were still on lockdown in California. All our projects are still shut down. All of our commercial is still getting bent over. So okay, I'm going to double down on Florida until, San Diego figures shit out, or California in general. And so that first year in 2020, the first half of the year, I should say, because I pretty much from May until the end of the year, did like 20 some flips. And then 2021 rolled around, just as the market was still just as hot. California was still it still had restrictions. It still had lockdowns. So the next year I did like 40 flips. And then, evolution, now we're obviously here and a lot has changed since then, but it kind of gives you a glimpse of how I started and then started building towards what I'm doing now.
What an answer.
Yeah. It's like 12 years and I guess 12 years and 10 minutes.
12 years and 12 minutes, man.
That's so there's a lot to take away from that, Jon.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I got to just say right off the top, first thing I hear and I see is that you have a just do it perspective. Just do it. You're clearly an optimist, right? In that you were bleeding out in California on this commercial stuff, and you come over here. Because one of the great things about flipping, it's something I said a lot of times to people who've ever asked me, like learning how to buy a deal right, how to renovate it and sell it. I'd rather have that skill than have a graduate degree from any university anywhere in the United States, because I can always make money, no matter what, in any market. If I have that skill, I know how to buy it, underwrite it, renovate it, and sell it. I'll never, ever be broke. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and that was kind of what I had to put in a game plan, right? It's like I swore I was out of residential and never doing it again, but I had that skill from the years prior that allowed me to pretty much just buy things sight unseen, knowing that it was a good cost basis and everything else would just fall into place. But what I will say though is the flipping market has changed quite a bit. Obviously, not talking about the values going up or down, the rates, but the quality has changed. The buyer expectation has changed. So when I first started flipping, I guess 10 years ago at this point, it was pretty much new flooring, paint, maybe a new appliance package. And that was what buyers expected. Like, oh, this house is renovated. Then, okay, now we need flooring, paint, cabinets, bathrooms. And that was what quantified as a buyer to get a renovated price. Now it's full rewire, all new plumbing, specs, roof, windows. And I think what's made it difficult is you can have the secret sauce, know what to buy, how to underwrite it, but deals are defined that requirements are almost impossible. So, back then when I was bleeding out, I had made this mindset, okay, I'm just going to flip houses and get out of this. I was able to buy 6 houses the next week that made sense. But if you told me to go buy 6 houses this week that made sense, good luck, because all of us would buy them right now if they're available. So that's the one thing that's made it really difficult, and which is why I've actually switched out of flipping again, because I just felt like you're chasing this unicorn that may or may not happen. And to have a long-term sustained business, you have to have predictable income in some regard. And it's almost, I don't say impossible, but it's definitely a lot harder right now if you are a full-time flipper to do that.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've got a couple of questions, just real quick, if you don't mind. So, early on in your career, I want to ask you if you feel this true or false question. Earlier on in your career, you were buying up real estate portfolios in a residential environment, if you will, to increase cash flow for yourself. Have you ever bought a real estate portfolio of residential homes that freed you financially from collecting rent from residential real estate? Has that yet, have you ever achieved that? Because
I can talk about this topic all day. It's one of my favorite topics. No, you say welcome for forever. It's a fake clickbait thing that's big right now. Cash flow is king. It's my favorite topic to talk about. But no, I was making a few $100 a month that maybe covered my phone bill. It was never like
right. So I just want to make that clear to the listeners. Large, even somewhat large real estate portfolios of buy and hold investments will not set you free from a cash flow perspective. They will make you wealthy if you hold on to them long enough. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, but maybe not, because you need to have a lot of money to get to enough cash flow afford to make you wealthy. Like most people that are listening are probably only going to be able to buy, house or two, three, maybe throughout their career. Like people are making about 50 a year, 200 a year. If they don't have other income sources, they're going to buy a house every 5-6 years. By the time that house makes them anything that's meaningful, they're going to be either in a wheelchair or they're going to be dead. So I think cash flow and appreciation can make you wealthy if you have a lot of money to play with in the beginning, which most people don't. I think I view cash flow investments as a wealth protector, asset protection, versus a wealth builder. If that makes any sense.
The reason I say it is that you always need, if you have a flywheel of capital, it could be a really high paying W-2 job, it could be a flipping business. The flywheel is the capital that provides the down payments for the real estate. If you hold the real estate long enough, that can create wealth. That's kind of been my equation. I use the equation debt by time by scale, but you need to be able to get on that debt in the first place. So you moved over to commercial, and this is where your story starts to get kind of super interesting. You're in Tampa, and I see you all over the city. You're a well-known name here. There's a part 2 to this story, and I'm going to sit back and let you tell it. You're flipping here in St. Pete, and I remember those days so much so. I've always seen myself 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's when I was super hungry, right? I got a lot of business done in those years. Pretty cool up until COVID. Quite frankly, I was happy enough to keep on keeping up. COVID hits, and I see everybody with a laptop in North America starting to throw offers on deals here in Tampa. The first time I ever got worried about my own business model, first time I ever like, shit, there's an onslaught of interest, and pricing has gone nuts. The efficiency is not there. I used to buy every third home in Pasco County on the foreclosure auctions and every fifth home here in Pinellas. And they're all shut down. So I remember going through the exact same thing as you did. I didn't read the market when I would do my comps. I wasn't factoring in the fact that this thing is going to appreciate by 22% this year. And so I didn't wrap my head around it. So I did a fair few deals, same as you, 20 to maybe 40 a year, those years, but I used to do, 100 plus a year. I agree with you right now we seem to be at this kind of junction where higher interest rates, there's no cash flow, higher prices, there's no yield. We're at this real tricky spot where everybody's trying to figure it out. Question one, we're here in Tampa for anybody listening. Question one, do we go find a new market? Question two, do we, all fall into new builds like everybody else? Question three, do we learn how to build, townhome communities? Do we learn how to, what do we learn and what do we do next? Because to your point, there's no scale in flipping really in the marketplace in general, unless you've got a little patch somewhere, in Indianapolis. You've got a backyard, there's not a huge amount of people there. But Florida is fast becoming California. And you'll see the similarities. You used to live there and you can see what's growing here. Jon, the last 2 years, you've made a lot of, you made a name for yourself in this city, doing big things. Can we pick up exactly where you left off? So you're doing these flips. The flips are starting to not make sense. I just sit back and just listen to where you go from there. How did you figure out Gordian's knot?
So 2020, 2021, flipping, let's say, right around 40 homes a year. That was like we're buying 2-3 homes a month. Everything was great. And then going into 2022, we had a lot of projects that were in 2022 quarter. The first quarter one is probably, you could argue, the top of the market. Q4 21, Q1 at 2022. So all things were great. And I had a lot of houses that were finishing. And what I noticed in the market was flipping was not getting any harder at that point, because that time was still amazing. But what I noticed that was outperforming by a long shot was new construction. You had every buyer from, New York and Chicago and Boston, LA, San Diego, that had deep pockets that did not want to buy the renovated 19th block single-story home. They wanted something that was special and nice. And the new construction homes were just, the numbers on it were insane. Part of it was not knowing what the Fed was about to do. I don't think anyone saw it, because Wall Street, even the top of the world, did not understand we're going to go from zero interest rates to 5%, 5-year treasury. So everything would seem to be great. I ended up buying a ton of land. Q1 of 2022, I bought, like 12 lots. And I was, you know what, I'm going to go out of flipping and I'm going to go full into development. I already knew how to underwrite really well. I knew the area really well. I had all the vendors, materials. It was already set in stone. I'm doing this. This is the game plan. And at the time, it made a ton of sense financially. So, lots happened the last few years. As those houses finished construction, as you can imagine, now we're in early to mid 2023, which is the absolute worst market I've ever been in my career.
Right.
So I had all these, I talked to Parker about this offline many times. I had, $20-some million of debt, not even just real estate, of debt for these new construction homes, because I was building a lot of luxury stuff. And, myself and other investors in the deal, and at this point, I had never lost money on any deal. I went a decade straight, never losing money. And now I'm facing the unknowns if a project's going to either make money, break even, or lose money, because they're not only sitting in the market, but the offers that we're getting were just like outrageous, because the buyer that was buying that house before said, well, if I buy it at $3 million, my mortgage is this. If I buy it at $2 million, my mortgage would be the same as $3 million 6 months prior. Drastic thing. And it made sense to me as well, because I was putting the lowball offers myself in on multifamily at the time, because you had to make the cash flow and the DSCR work. But nonetheless, that was my first kick on the ass in Florida. I had my kick in the ass back in California from COVID. And that one, I really felt like it was more like actually meant to be, because I stand by this. I did not make any greedy mistakes back in the COVID years. I think everyone, big or small, had the same thing at the beginning of COVID. So the lesson learned was not so much what am I going to change, it was more so I was meant to do bigger things and do bigger projects versus just what I was doing before. So that was what I learned from the COVID thing. The mistakes I made going into 2023, I took a lot of credit for, because sure, none of us saw the rate environment changing drastically, and that part, we couldn't control. But what I learned about is when things seem to be too good to be true and everything's going perfectly, you start to ignore the downside in your, underwriting has best case scenario, conservative, and worst case scenario. I was not really underwriting anymore to the worst case scenario. I was underwriting either we're going to crush it, still hit a double. Like, it was still
right.
So I think I got blind a little bit to what had made me money the decade prior and never losing money, of being maybe too careful and too conservative. Going back to David, like David, you stopped flipping as much because you stayed at your same underwriting metrics, not factoring in the high growth appreciation. I was underwriting that because I saw that, even though probably should have been somewhere in the middle there of not doing that. But so 2023 happened, and I had, some of the deals did okay and made okay money, and some of them broke even, but I had some losses, and that was really tough to swallow for two reasons. One, or I guess for three reasons. One, you feel like a loser, so that was just like, the athlete in me, that sucks and you're hopeless. But the two important reasons, that obviously investors, right? So investors and my own money, and those are things you don't want to lose. So I had a situation where I had never lost money. My investor had actually understood that this was going to be their first loss ever. And actually, funny enough, over half of them were like, yeah, you made us a lot of money the years prior. It is what it is. We know that the market's changed. You didn't really do anything negligible or whatever. So, but I just had this weird gut thing in my stomach that I just don't like. One, reputation, and I want to have a good reputation for, being a strong fiduciary and having integrity, but also I just don't like that. It was just a bad feeling. So on the losses, I covered my losses, but I also covered all my investors' losses. So whatever dollar amount they put in, I gave them the exact dollar amount back. They broke even, which is still a loss. I mean, a year and a half of dead money, but inflation, we're going to call it, but at least they got their initial investment back. And I did that for those reasons, but also because I knew that I was not going to go retire and like just say, okay, I tried. I knew it was going to be back in the space in some regard at some point, where I wanted to make sure that the loyalty of some of these investors were still around. And they say, you know what, Jon, he made us a lot of money, and the one deal he lost, he made it right. And, that was kind of what I was banking on. So, 2023, now I'm like kind of like paralysis, right? Because I've stopped flipping homes. I got out of that. All my new constructions, did either failed or did okay. And I was like, maybe I'm not a good developer. Maybe it's the market. There was a lot of just like questions that I was asking myself and figuring out what the next steps were. Meanwhile, on the background, which is the bulk of my business since 2018, is commercial. So I was still buying apartment complexes. Same thing I was doing the years prior: value add, distressed, underperforming, either due to capital expenditures being neglected or poor management, whatever it may be, or a combination of both. And that model for years, I would buy, I would get everyone out, renovate, stabilize new rents, and then I would do the cash flow refi. And the problem is by 2023, the rates are so high that you'd be negative. You'd owe money.
Cash out.
Yeah, cash in, cash.
Yeah, cash in.
Now I'm like, okay, so I'm losing all this money from the development. My whole network at this point is pretty much in these commercial deals that are stuck because I can't pull any money out. And going back to David's point, even when you own apartment complexes, there's no cash flow. You hear this all the time, cash flow this, cash flow that. Yeah, like there's money coming in, but I don't know, it's not paying for anything. Like the big paydays in commercial, even on the multifamily, is when you do the cash flow refi or you go to sell, and all that forced appreciation that you did by adding value is when you get paid. You don't get paid on the cash flow. I mean, we have deals that are 32 unit buildings where, the rent roll is $700,000 a year, but after all the capital expenditures and operating expenses and reserves, like maybe 100 of that goes out to the investors, but you have 4 investors, that's $25,000. Like, what is that going to do for you, really? Even 10 of those, like it's not. So all this is kind of another mindset and light bulb moment. So, okay, I had a job back in San Diego. I bought myself a job at the Flips. I said, I want bigger and better things. So I do the commercial. All I did was I just bought myself a better job. I was just doing the same thing, but for larger scale, both on development and or the multifamily. So again, a light bulb moment was I want to do one thing and one thing only, besides make money and everything else, is to get myself out of a job. I want to own a company, a business. And I always thought I did. I thought I owned a business. I thought real estate flipping was a business. I thought owning or developing homes was a business. I thought raising capital, putting my money in and doing this was a business. It's not. You're a real estate investor and you're trading your time for money, and that's all it is. For the LPs, sure, it's silent, but like what I quantify as business is actually like only a fucking sandwich shop. That's only a business. Yeah. Because you create systems where you can do it at one location and then you open a second sandwich shop and so on and so forth. You really can't do that in real estate unless you have, your grandpa's money or a family office that says, hey, here's 40 million of working capital.
Right.
Off the top, the first 10 million you can go hire payroll. Like it's not like that. You have to build it as you go. Therefore, you have to invest a lot of time and wear a lot of hats. So 2023 happens. I'm pretty much do nothing besides take it on the chin. And then going into the end of 2023, I was just soul searching. I was like, you know what? I need to figure this out. To David's point, like I'm always just like, what's the next step? I'm just gonna do it. I'm not gonna sit around feeling bad for myself. But I needed a game plan. I wasn't gonna just like go back to flipping like I said, it was getting harder and harder to find deals. And I wanted to stay in real estate. I'm not gonna leave real estate. And the light bulb moment was I have all these years of experience doing flips, rentals, development, commercial, shopping centers, mixed use, like industrial. Like I've been involved in a lot of different sectors of real estate in all facets. There's a lot of value in that. How can I create a business around that? And I had this light bulb moment in December. I was in Miami. I thought I moved there. I actually moved there to get out of Tampa, just to be in Slate there for 2 months. And I was drinking a cup of coffee at my Airbnb in Havana the week before Christmas. And it just came to me. I said, okay, I'm doing it. And then sure enough, I started going back and forth between Tampa and Miami because I knew that if I were to do this business, it'd need to be in Tampa where my name's prevalent and it'd be easier to scale there. And that led me moving back to Tampa about a year ago or so. And we just had our first full year with the new company, 57 advisory group, 57s for my dad. My dad's for the next 57. It was the same number. I were that number for hockey. It's meant a lot for me for various things. So I named it after my dad. And then the advisory group, obviously just adding consulting, advising for other investors. And we just had our first full year. And I bought pretty much virtually 0 deals all last year. I stayed true to what my game plan was, and that was be a business operator and not an investor.
Jon, I want to go back for a second because, our podcast is called Burn Your Boats, right? You only named about 17 instances where you had to burn your boats, right? I don't know if we've had someone on as a guest that's burned their boats more over a 35-minute period than you have. So, I think that it seems to come fairly natural for you to say, okay, I don't like this. I'm not being treated well. I'm hitting a glass ceiling. Let me pivot, right? And that's easier said than done. And especially for a lot of people listening to this, they're having they're probably going through some of those challenges that you've gone through. However, a lot of the reasons why people don't, quote unquote, burn their boats is because of the reasons you just said, right? Like, oh, I lost money. I had to cover my investor returns. That's so risky. It's almost like I told you so, Jon. Like, I told you that if I went out and I quit my job and I started flipping or I started doing this quote unquote risky stuff, that it's probably going to bite me in the ass, and voila, it bit you in the ass, right? And so that gives, it's like, oh, well, that means that I'm so glad I'm still in my job. Maybe I don't like my job. Maybe I don't get any vacation time. I hate my boss. I kick the dog when it comes home. But that didn't happen to me. What do you have to say to the listener that's like, aha, I got you? What are your thoughts? What do you say to them now that you had the highs? You kind of went down a little bit. You dealt with kicks to the stones. You're having super difficult discussions with your investors saying, hey, I know I was going to give you these returns, and I'm actually having to pull out of pocket just to give you your money back. What do you say to the listener right now that you had kicks to the stones? It's been challenging, yet here you are. What would you say directly to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep question, deep answer. Really think about it. I think the answer a few different ways. One, thinking big picture, right? I've always thought big picture. Even back when I was a kid and teenager, I always had aspirations to make the NHL and be. I used to play Wayne Gretzky in my head and win the Stanley Cup in my garage. And I always thought like just bigger things, right? And going through being an elite athlete as a kid, being ranked one of the top in the world. I led the USA in scoring as a kid. So I had a lot of that kind of perspective at 14 years old, 15 years old. And then going into, pro sports, which is, also as a big superstar into now as a nobody within the sports world, because there's a lot, we're all superstars when you turn pro. Like doesn't matter what sport it is, like you're all the best players at your high school and your junior leagues.
Right.
What you realize is that life is cutthroat right now. So all the aspirations you had of being a pro, okay, great, you're a pro now. Now it's business. And, it's having that mindset of whatever happens, good or bad, you have to have a short memory. And I say this all the time. My strongest trait in life is having a short memory, both good or bad. I could literally make 200 grand today right now on a flip, and it's great. And then 30 minutes later, I've already forgotten about it. And that's like a truthful, like, anything in the loss, like the 2023, when I was writing checks, literally at, 7 figures in losses, I lost probably $2 million in about a 15-month period. That fucking sucks. Like you spent all those years, becoming a millionaire, and you're proud of that. And then, so yeah, it's okay. Write the check, sucks. Next day, move on. So I think that's the biggest thing for me when I give advice is like, you're going to have ups and downs. The other thing too is if you don't try, you won't ever know. But also, worst case, just go back to your job. Like I never I'm not like worried about going homeless. If I try all this new business, and I spent all this time and money, and I lose, and it ends up failing, like worst case, I can go get a job as a bar back. No one wants to be that, but I don't see the risk in it. Worst case, you take a step backwards, you get a job at a coffee shop, or you drive Uber, whatever, until you figure out the next game plan. If it really got that bad, right?
Right.
So I never saw it as like all these decisions that I had to pivot, like either it's right, it's correct, and it's a life lesson, either good or bad, and I make money, or worst case, I just go back to where I was at when I first decided to move forward on that game plan. So that's kind of how I see it. And also the feedback on the big picture thinking, it's like I not only do I save, I practice it. Like I did not pay myself a salary in 2022, 2023, and last year I did not pay myself a salary. So finally, first week of this year, I paid myself a little bit from what I made on the year prior. But like I went 3 years of just living off of like my savings, which I was fortunate to have some savings, and also every dollar I made reinvested into whatever I thought I was doing at that time. And most people are not willing to do that. They want to go buy the car, the fancy shoes, or the vacation when it's either that or nothing, right? So if you have enough money to say, okay, I'm going to travel with this lump sum, but at this lump sum I can reinvest in my business, then it's fine. That's where you want to be. But if you only have one lump sum, you can either choose going and buying stupid shit or doubling down on your future. You have to choose to double down on your future every single time until you have enough lump sums where you can do both things.
Right.
And that's the way I've thought my whole life is like, pay the price now. So back in hockey, like no social life, never went to any school dances. It was all about hockey. And then, now in business, same thing. It's like, I really, not have those luxuries if that's the choice. And then down the road, have the ability to do what I want.
I got to jump in. John, a couple of observations and then a question, right? You've remained incredibly optimistic. I think that's a superpower, right? Now, that's probably drive, you could frame that however you like. Another question I have is that, I've always said when I was out there, like you say, you're making a couple of $1 million a year, right? I never, ever, ever could, celebrated a win. Never. Not one time. Like if I, no matter what I did, we make whatever amount of money in a year. I'm like, yeah, but guess what? Mr. Taxman's going to come. There's so much of floating in the air. It's blah, blah, blah. I don't see it. I don't really make it. I don't feel it. I don't feel rich. But I equally never commiserated the losses. So it's funny. It's to get back to, Clark's question about like, I told you so type of thing, right? It's like, no, I really don't care about the wins or the losses. I care about what I'm learning along the way. And you're a young man. What age are you, John, right now?
23.
You're 33. And how many, in dollars, how many deals would you say you have done? That you have, let's say, assets that you've had under management? Let's just say AUM for a minute.
I eclipsed the $100 million mark in 2022. So
$100 million of deals for 33-year-old. We're sitting here, you haven't paid yourself, you haven't done this. And
Yeah.
There's a lot, we were talking before the show here, there's a lot of people out there beating their chest, like, I'm a $100 million guy or a $200 million guy. And there is the last 5 years of real estate, and I'm 53. I'm 20 years older than you. And I went through, all of the mess of 2008 and 9 and 10, and I was heavily involved in that as well. But while they're very, very different, we haven't had a catastrophic fall off in valuations per se. At least you were able to get out of those deals. The deals that you were stuck in wasn't a total loss. It wasn't where houses were selling below build cost. There's still builders building today, new build construction all over Tampa. They're getting out of their deals. If anything, the question I'm going to have for you now is, where do you see the market, just the overall market? This isn't about John right now, but where do you see the market? And then we're going to get into your business next, because your revelation is exactly the same as mine, and I'm going to talk about it. So I have a follow-up question. But first, before I get the follow-up question, where do you see the zeitgeist within the Tampa market right now?
So I would say this is probably a generalization for the U.S., not just Tampa, but what I believe in, I've been saying this for years now, and I think it's becoming more apparent, is that people don't want to own homes anymore. It's not the same pride that everyone wants to have, an American dream, you can call it, get married, have 2 kids, have a dog, and have a white picket fence. That's not it. I think Gen Zs, millennials, and whoever's younger than Gen Z, I don't know, Gen Y, they want flexibility, they want amenities, they want be able to walk down their out of the building to the elevator to the coffee shop or yoga studio, and you can't get that in most suburbs. No,
Right.
They don't want to deal with the AC going out or the light bulb going out. They want to be able to put something on their phone app and say, hey, my dishwasher has a leak and be fixed an hour later. So with that being said, I think we're becoming more of a renter's nation, and I think the like middle of America type homes, again, in suburbs, are going to get hurt the most. I think that those houses that are offered not fancy, no amenities, the nearest, grocery store is 10 minutes away. You want to go to a pool fun bar, it's a 30-minute drive downtown. I think those get hit the hardest in valuations. I think from a residential standpoint, the only thing that will do well and outperform is the luxury, because going back to people that are, they want those amenities, they want the luxuries. If you're going to go from an apartment to a house, they want to go to a house that's badass, high ceiling, big kitchen, spa, 4-car garage, whatever it is. I think those houses will outperform in residential space. And that's what my underwriting right now. I'm seeing that in Tampa, for example, what I would quantify as luxury in Tampa is about 2.5 or higher. Obviously the houses go up to $8, $9, $10 million now, but 2.5 is that first threshold of what you can call is, FU money in Tampa. And
Yeah, it's
you're still a fucking peasant here.
Yeah.
2.5 is a big house, but it's everyone that's buying our products at 2.5 or higher are the life insurance guys, the attorneys, the guys that think they're hot shit in Tampa, small market, got the Rolls Royce, or they got the Porsche, whatever, and they're proud to say that's home because it's one of a kind. There's not tons of it in Tampa. as far as ultra luxury and new construction. So that product will do well, I think, especially in secondary markets, like a Tampa, for example. But I think what's going to do the best, and I'll give Grant Cardone a shout out. I don't agree with a lot of things he says, but one thing that he's been saying for many years is that, he pretty much quoted the Renters Nation, is that he thinks that people are just becoming more and more satisfied. It doesn't matter if you're married or have kids with apartments. And I think that apartments, up until probably 2-3 years ago, garden style did just as well as a high rise as far as occupancies and rent growth and things of that nature. But I do think, going back to my example of the luxury house versus the suburb house, I think the Class A and Class B multifamily will absolutely kill Class C multifamily, because, again, people want the rooftop pool, the gym, the sauna at their building, want to go downstairs and have, things to do and walkability. The garden style out in, the middle of the suburbs doesn't have that, and you're back to the same issue. Sure, you can argue an affordability issue where the people are still going to live there. But I think as far as rent bumps and valuations, and having the ability to make money in a faster fashion, building a Class A building versus a Class C is going to do way better, in my opinion.
What about build to rent all over the nation? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that falls into two things. One, people like the rent. So I think you're going to have a bigger market than you had in the past as far as people renting homes. Like, single family homes has actually outperformed apartments in rentals as far as growth. But going back to the other point is that if you build a basic house in the middle of nowhere, just because it's new construction, I think that you figure out that it's not that desirable. And actually, to give you a perfect example, about 15 minutes north in Palm River, 15 minutes north of downtown area, there's this brand new subdivision. It's like, I want to say 100 homes. They're beautiful, they're great, and they're renting for like $2,000. So a 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $2,000 new construction. Thinking, oh, that's great. Where are you gonna get that anywhere else in Tampa? They are like half empty, and they've been built for a year and a half now. And I was speaking with an investor that owns like 6,000, because it was they were set by the developer, but sold to investors' portfolios, the majority of them. Very few individual like primary resident owners there. And this one lady has 6 houses there, and she bought a portfolio of 6 from the developer, and she had 1 of the 6 rented, and she's having for 6-7 months now. And
wow.
She's actually asking for advice. She called her consulting company. She's like, what am I doing wrong? Like, well, it's new construction, so you're not going to upgrade or improve them. The rents are already amazing. Like, she's like $1,950 to $2,000 for this new house. I said, the one problem that you can't fix is your biggest problem. She's like, what's that? You're in the middle of fucking nowhere. No, like, the nearest Publix 10 minutes away. Your nearest gym is like Planet Fitness. There's no training company, no bars. And besides someone that just is going there strictly from affordability, which you're going to have renters that do that. That's part of life. If you only afford $2,000, that's what it is. But that's the biggest issue. So I think build to rent does great in certain key markets. And I could give you, like, I think build to rent in Dallas would do very well, because Dallas is one of these saturated cities where you don't have to be downtown to have coffee shops and bars. So you have all the submarkets. Tampa is not that. Tampa has downtown, Hyde Park, and that's about it for subpar, and maybe Midtown, right? So, like, if you're not near those, you're driving to some 1970s strip mall with some, like, family pizza spot, right? So, what would it answer? I think it does well only if it's in density areas.
All right, I completely agree. I have been saying this for a long time. We tried when the numbers just weren't working, when interest rates went up, and we tried to market a product where we were going to buy, really well located, just tear down home, so we could buy the lot, get a mortgage at least on the house, stabilize the house for a minute, keep it for a couple of years, let the neighborhood gentrify around it, and then put a new home construction on it, right? All downtown, all walkable, all in St. Pete. So the neighborhoods, you know what I'm talking about, right? And that product, if you will, went down like a lead balloon in my investor portal, which is 7,500 investors. People who know me, they like me, they trust me. But that product was too much to conceive. What do you mean we're going to buy a lot? Well, who's and yet, new build homes in the outer suburbs, they're new. They must be better, right? To your exact point, I couldn't, they were selling 1 a minute, right? There was so much demand for that. And yet in town, Class A neighborhoods, slightly older homes, but $1 million homes coming in on the street all around you. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Anybody who lives in Tampa knows what I'm talking about. Anybody who lives in any urban area. And so I've been harking on for the last 4 years at least. I'm like, buy location first, because it's the only thing that's going to be left. This idea of buying out into the outer suburbs. And I also agree with you. I think the only places that people are going to end up buying where they actually want to buy, because there's a need to buy if you're in town, because of very, very limited resource. But if you're out in the outer suburbs, you buy a new home construction right now for $350. And Lennar and Pulte and KB Homes are building all around you. Good luck trying to sell it for $350 in the next 5 years, with all of the national home builders all around you giving incentives up the yin-yang, right? And so I think investors are not clued into that. But I want to get into, before we break up, I want to get into your aha moment, which is a similar moment that I had. Built a multi-million-dollar fix-and-flip business over the years, did a lot of deals, right? My biggest regret in my life, John, is that I never built a business, because that thing was entirely focused around me, my business partner, the teams that we had. The minute we walked away, the business, I couldn't sell that business. And so I looked around me and like, yeah, you can still make money flipping, you can still do this, but I've got maybe 15 years where I want to work, right? I could retire right now, but I need to do something with my time. I've got young kids. And so I'm like, I got to spend the next 15 years building a business, a real business, something that's repeatable, to your point, that's scalable, that has no limit to how it can be scaled, that it's systemized on we can map out what tasks need to be done. It works in all economies. It's not, okay, it works if interest rates are low or interest rates are high, because that's what I hate about real estate in general. So I've come to this exact same conclusion, is that if you want to build a business that's scalable, that's not recession proof, if you will, you've got to think differently. And so my biggest regret in my business life is not focusing on building a business that I could sell. At the end of the process, I could sell this business. John, you've got a new business. Talk to me about it.
Yeah, you nailed it. You said you can't sell your fucking business because it's you. Once you leave, you're not selling anything. There's no fucking business.
That's right.
So the company that I have now is pretty much everything I was doing for myself, I'm now offering for others. So real estate consulting, real estate project management, owner rep services, custom homes. So kind of covering all facets of what I was doing for myself on the spec side now for clients. And the reason why I felt like that was, besides the fact that I was very knowledgeable in those trades, is going back to the recession proof, right? So what I was doing in the high rate environment, which we're still pretty much in the same rate environment, we're back to 7%, was development, flips, and value add multifamily. And it was just making it harder for that, the work be worth my time. But you can make money in all markets, right? My biggest issue is that I bought a lot of those deals at the top, and then I was trying to get rid of them in today's environment. If I bought today and sold tomorrow, I'd still make money, right? It's all perspective of when you buy and underwriting. So I knew there was still a lot of transactions going on in today's market, still a lot of investors. So I knew that there was a need for the service that I was willing to offer, right? And I wanted to go something that I can be eventually removed from and scale out a bigger team, move into multiple markets, and then either retire, sell, whatever, or a combination of both. And I knew that if I was only doing project management, which is very hands-on, I pretty much bought myself a job again. So at the beginning, I thought the only service really to offer was project management. Cause like, oh, just give us the flip, we'll handle it for you. I'm like,
Right.
Now I'm doing the same amount of work I was doing before, but now I have less upside because the profit goes to the client. And it's funny because I had my first couple clients in that space. I found deals that I would normally buy myself, and I said, "Hey, here's the deals," and that's how the life works. And I'm making like a lot of money on these flips. I'm like, shit, I should have kept myself. It was the same mindset of like trying to get out of the rat race of buying every deal. But what I realized was like, this is not scalable. I mean, so what I early last year, as I was adapting the company, I said, okay, I want to operate more like an attorney, and I want to be on retainer, hourly, and that's scalable because I can be in Bora Bora and take a Zoom call or do computer work. I can eventually hire other consultants underneath me to take those calls, and I'm only looped in on the big ones. Like that was kind of the next mindset shift, probably early of last year. So I started saying, I'm going to charge X per hour for this service and this much per hour for this service and so on, give like a menu of prices and make them buy, 10-hour minimum. So then that was the next step. And I like that because I bought back my time. I can now go travel, which I really want to do because I didn't travel as much for a while. And I knew that eventually, as I got busier and more money coming in, I could hire someone of my nature or similar skill that could take those calls. But going back to, being antsy, I love to have wins quickly and grow and compound business and things of that nature. That's a very slow model because unless you're selling 100-hour packages, selling a 10-hour package at $500 an hour is $5,000. $500 an hour to that person's a lot of money, but $5,000 to me is not going to
Yeah.
I would get a client every day for five.
Yeah.
So there was another like, okay, this is great. We'll offer it. We'll still offer the service, but that's not going to be the needle moving of the company. What am I missing? What am I missing? Okay. What is in demand still? Going back to what I was thinking about as far as what product is outperforming in Tampa. It's luxury homes. This is still what's absolutely done the best the last 4 or 5 years in Tampa is luxury homes. And even with the rate slowdown, because with the rate environment, everyone's DTI constrained. So everyone that was buying a house at $800,000 can now only afford 520, and 520 homes are now 300, and people don't want to downgrade the lifestyle. So it's put a big damper on the everyday type of home that's transacting. Do they're in the $2.5 million range or plus, or cash buyers still, or they're not going to change their lifestyle even if the mortgage payment is higher, or they have portfolio loans, margin loans that they're getting better rates, interest only. So that market has actually still gone up and done pretty well. So going back to, okay, how do I still keep business minded, but have a service that can be more gross revenue coming in? Custom homes. And I look around Tampa, and there's a lot of custom home companies here that have been around for a long time. But two things. One, everyone I talk to, they're awful, I guess. I mean, so we talk to realtors, and I was like, they build very basic homes for their clientele for the last 30 years that have very low bar of expectations in Tampa, like shaker cabinets, vinyl flooring, like level 3 drywall, like things that are just like very simple and basic. So as far as like being unique and offering a really superior product, there's not much competition. And the other thing is having my set background and years of sourcing the best people, best pricing. I've gone into some of these meetings where I'm still able to make the money that I want to make, but still kill my competitor because they never thought to shop the best prices. They never cared because custom home builders have to do everything to the client. So me coming to the potential client with that value add, saying, hey, I'm going to act as an owner rep on your behalf, but I can dive into what owner rep means in the real estate space. But pretty much, I'm your big brother in this deal. I'm your fiduciary. I'm going to make X amount flat rate. So me making you go over budget or over duration does not benefit me. It hurts me, actually. So I'm going to go to bat to find the best pricing, the best materials, best vendors. And that's how we operate. So we don't operate like a traditional GC or builder. We go to them and say, hey, we're your fiduciary, we're your owner rep, and we're going to go and get this superstar team to keep your costs down. So we've done this now with some of our clients, both on new construction, but also like super high-end remodel, like on Bayshore Boulevard and on the water in St. Pete, where we're coming in, building a superior product, but coming in, $50, $60 less a square foot than the other marquee companies that have been around for 20, 30 years. So I found a niche there where I can say, hey, here's all what I can bring to this custom home space. And sure, there's a learning curve. Like I'm not, Clark knows this. I'm not like going to hold your hand and go pick out backsplash at the showroom. Like that's not my DNA. So I'm a little bit rough around the edges, but I'm going to save you a lot of money. House is great. So that was the other light bulb moment. I added that in there as like the kind of the final piece of the puzzle. And now, the first year of the company, so the first 6 months, we did zero, actually negative, because I was spending money on payroll, marketing, and kind of putting the word out there.
Yeah.
Out here. And the last 6 months of the year, we did 2.5 million in revenue.
Oh, that's great.
This on the 5th or 6th of February, and we already have $1 million banked in the first month of the year. So the defining moment was two things. One, adding the custom homes element, and that's both for new construction, also high end, and being the only company that I can find in Tampa that goes about it as an owner rep versus like a traditional builder. And the other thing is a lot of the clients that inquired about project management has now shifted toward our consulting. And so we have a lot of repeating flip clients and spec build clients where they're not massive paydays, but now that we're making them money, they're doing volume. So it's found this background money and it's keeping the lights on here, where the custom homes are slower paydays, but bigger.
Jon, there's a whole industry in Europe that does that. right? It's funny, when I left Dublin, um, I got a degree in construction technology, right? And I come over to the United States, and I'm in working for mid-sized construction companies, and I see the architect, I see the client, and then there's a mystery role in these construction companies called estimator, right? Estimator. That was, so I would estimate these projects, right? But the client themselves, were largely unguarded, right? I found it amazing because in Europe, you have 4 people in every team. Excuse me, 3. You got an architect, you got a client, and you got a quantity surveyor. And that quantity surveyor is the lion at the gate on behalf of the client, making sure that the general contractor, who's that 4th person, is getting value for money, is providing that his numbers that he's submitting are real, that the cost of that tile, they know exactly how many linear feet there is, they know exactly how many tiles there is, they know where they bought them, they know what taxes are, they know everything about what the general contractor is doing. So that the quantity surveyor in Europe sits there protecting the client from the general contractor. I always found that you take that person out and you've got the Wild West. You've got a client trying to defend themselves against a general contractor. And it's just funny money. They're just like, oh, it's 40 grand or, oh, it's 120 grand. Oh, I had to redo that line. It's $9,000 for this. And they're like, the client's like, I don't know. I know nothing about what it costs to dig a trench. You know what I mean? And they're left helpless. And so that industry exists in Europe. It's called quantity surveying. And if this is your new role, there's a massive demand for this. I mean, way bigger than you and way bigger than Tampa. I'm talking about somebody who represents the client interests in the relationship between the client and the general contractor, who understands the cost of things, because the Kelly Blue Book ain't going to save you. So I'm going to close out with that, John. What you're providing is quantity surveying, and you just haven't put a number or a name on it or a tag on it, but that's what it is.
Yeah, and I think you nailed it. There is, when I was doing research of what to be special as far as stick out in competition was that, right? And I use the example, because I'm in the sports world, is I am your agent. So like you said, you don't know what things cost. If I come to you as a GM to a client directly and say, hey, I'm going to offer you $1 million a year. Like, oh, that sounds pretty good. And you say, yes. Meanwhile, if you have an agent that knows the market, knows your comparable player, knows your potential, he says, fuck no, you're not taking that. You're worth $10 million. You didn't know anything. Yeah. Same thing in real estate and construction, especially, because no one has a background in it, right? So I've seen everything and been through that, been ripped off a million times, all the different things that now I can look out for the client. And the biggest thing how a GC operates is that they say, hey, I'm gonna build your house for $1 million. And they give you some bogus breakdown, very vague, dirty line items, and they give you a couple allowances, and you say, okay, that's my budget. Okay. Then what happens is he has to protect his margin. So if he's a bill for $1 million, maybe he thinks it's cost 800 grand. So he thinks it's make 200 grand. All of a sudden, this surprise is, and it's a cost 50 grand. He messed up. He was supposed to do the takeoffs from day one. It's a new construction. You have the plans from day one. So what happens is, instead of eating that like someone should, he says, oh, sorry, guys, this was unexpected change order. So now you're at $1,050,000. And this happens throughout the whole project. Oh, that flooring that you liked, you picked out, the allowance is $3, but you picked out like $6 for a foot. I need to protect my margin as a GC. So you need to pay that full $3 plus 30% for whatever, for fun. On top of that, and this happens, and you get a really bad taste and rep in your mouth. You hear these stories. So coming from our standpoint, we are the big brother that will go beat the shit out of the GC, metaphorically, and protect our clients, protect our little brother, where we say, hey, no, we're going to do this from day one before we can start sign any contracts, start the project. We're going to do our own takeoffs. We know what things cost, and we know where to compare it to what your bullshit one is. And then we're going to put allowances on everything based on what the client picks from day one, not what is going to pick 4 months later, because whatever they pick is never going to match the allowance of the GC from day one. So there's a lot more upfront planning, months and months, and many years of our experience to do that on behalf of the client before they put a deposit, before they put the money in. And then because with the fiduciary, if that GC or plumber, electrician, carpenter does not honor that contract, we fire them on their behalf, and we have 15 others ready to go behind them. First, it's stuck with someone in bed and then doesn't know what to do. There's liens on the house. Legal. So that's the biggest thing when we shifted into the custom home space. So what I call it the retail client space, the everyday person. And we go with that approach, a little bit of education, because there's not, people never heard the owner rep term. But once we explain it that way and really like make it black and white, like this is like why we're of value, it's been a no-brainer. We've been beating out a lot of companies that have been around longer than I've been alive in Tampa.
The key takeaway there, and we got to go, but the key takeaway you just said is that the client is in you, the owner, the person who's building the house for themselves. You come in and you're doing the takeoff. So you're doing the full estimate of costs on their behalf before you go to the builders. You already know what it's going to cost. That's invaluable. Clark, close it out. That's fantastic. Jon, that's powerful stuff. I think you got a long and amazing runway in front of you, because quite frankly, it doesn't exist.
So I think we could go on for a really long time and talk about a lot of different things. I love the market chat. I think that we should bring you back for like a part B of the, what's going on with the market, because I know you have some strong opinions about that, and you're not gonna hold back. But unfortunately, we're gonna have to wrap it up. So Jon, you've got to really, you've gone through all these different pivots, all these different changes, to kind of stay with the market. You've got a cool business model that you've identified here. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that need that hand-holding, that don't know how to build a house, or when a builder says, hey, it's going to cost X, or the change order is going to cost Y, and you're like, what are you going to do? Say, no, I'm not going to pay the change order. I'm going to only have, half of vanity in the bathroom now. You're like, yeah, I guess I have to pay it, right? So there's huge value to that. If people want to get a hold of you, if they like that, if they like what they're hearing, and they're like, at least tell me more, because your analogy of the sports agent, it connected with me. I'm like, okay, I think I know what you're talking about. But then it's like the sports agent where the guy gets $1 million and he's like, no, you can get much more, and you can tweak the contract so that you get a 5-year deal instead of a 3-year deal, right? So there's all, the devil's in the details, right? It's not just the price, it's the terms and the different ways. So people that are hearing to this right now, and they've stuck with us this time, what's the best way to get a hold of you? We're going to put your information in the show notes, but what's the best, easiest way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, I appreciate that. A few ways. So our website is the57ag.com, so the57ag.com. My Instagram, which is probably the most actively used, even though it's not a business page, is _Jon Parker. I don't have an H in Jon. And business phone number is 813-918-9340. And I think, like you said, just to wrap this up and be short, because I know we've been talking about this a long time, is the best example is I use, because sports is mine, but like everyday life is, you bring a car in for an oil change, and then they just say that your engine's falling out, your tire, and you don't know, you're scared, like, oh, if I know, yes, I'm gonna have a risky car. But if you brought your uncle who's a mechanic with you, and now you feel a lot safer about making it.
Yeah,
we are that person that comes with you, so you're not being taken advantage of.
Yeah, I love how facts tell and stories sell, right? And I think that probably the best analogy is the car analogy, when you go in to get your oil changed, and they're like, this is wrong, and I'm like, I have no idea. You got your uncle there. It's like, that's bullshit. He shows you this, and he's like, you're able to kind of work through that, and then you feel more secure about it. Ironically, you'll probably end up spending less money hiring a service like yours than if you just trust the builder, trust the contractor, right? So we've got to wrap this up. Jon, I'm glad that we were able to have you on. I think, David, we're going to have to do a part B, but we appreciate it. And with that, guys, we'll see you next time. And thank you so much.
Thanks, Jon. Appreciate it.
Well, that is a wrap for today, folks. We hope that this episode shed some light on the complexities of the real estate market and kind of really gave you some actionable insights. Because remember, you navigate the world of property investment, it requires more than just luck. You're going to need strategy, you're going to need knowledge, and of course, you're going to need a little dash of courage. And if you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button. Leave us a review on any of the podcast platforms that you listen to, and YouTube as well. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Burn Your Boats Wealth, and leave comments, talk to us about things that you want us to talk about or things you disagree with us on. We appreciate all that type of insight. Your support really fuels our fire to bring you even more valuable content. So we appreciate you. We appreciate the support, and we will see you next time.
You've been listening to the Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast with Clark Lunt and David Shaw. We would love to hear from you. Please reach out at contact@burnyourboatswealth.com with comments, questions, and if you have a topic you would like Clark and David to discuss on an upcoming episode. We would very much appreciate it if you took the time to rate and review Burn Your Boats on your favorite podcast listening app, and make sure to follow and share on social media. Content in Burn Your Boats Wealth podcast is for entertainment purposes only and is not legal or financial advice. Please review our legal disclaimer at burnyourboatswealth.com. Thank you and have a great day.